Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a man who, upon meeting a friend in the streets of the kingdom, said, "Achoo!" And his friend, knowing the proper thing to do, of course, said, "Gesundheit!" At exactly the same time, in a land far to the east, there was another man who also met a friend on the street, and he said, "Achoo!" His friend, too, knew the proper thing to say, for he replied, "Hello, Charlie. How's tricks?" Yes, R2 was his name. R2 had many friends. R2 had great wealth because R2 had the only Chinese restaurant in town that served salami pizza. R2 also had a fine son who greeted him one night with a question.
"Honorable father, I should like to marry and settle down. May I have your worthy permission?"
I must have time to think on such a heavy question. I shall give you my answer in the morning.
R2 was unable to sleep that night. He tossed and turned in his bed, fighting to make the decision. By sunup the following day, he had made up his mind and gave the answer to his son.
No.
My father wise as boiled owl, but can he give one reason why I cannot marry?
Yes.
And that all being?
To have a wife, one must have a house in which to put her.
Then inexhaustible son will find a house.
Wasting no time, the young man set off to do just that. He had not gone far when he came to a great river, and there, standing on the bank, he met an old man who...
I must cross this river, young youth. Help me, and I shall tell you a secret of good fortune.
Knowing that a secret of good fortune could very well aid him in his quest, the lad agreed. But it was a rougher trip than what the aged one had expected. However, he kept his promise and told the young man the secret.
Yes. Honorable, hooray! What a fine secret!
Following the old man's instructions, the boy hurried off into the forest, where he soon found a grove of lychee nut trees. Picking up one of the lychee nuts that had fallen to the ground, he cracked it open. And with a blinding flash, a fine house popped out. A short time later, he once again stood before his father.
No?
No.
What excuse to being this time? Excitable son has a fine house.
Yes, but there is still one thing you need before you can marry.
Dollar to chicken fly lice, he say a sweetie.
That thing is a sweetie.
You see? Honorable father, wait right here. Swift son, be right back.
Quickly returning to the grove of lychee nut trees, he selected the largest lychee nut he could find. Then, with a sharp rap, he cracked it open. And out popped the most beautiful maiden he'd ever seen.
Oh, hot diggy dog! What a being a sweetie if ever I see one!
This time R2 found no further objections and at last gave permission for his son to marry. The wedding was held and there was a great celebration. R2's son was now the happiest young man in the land, but it wasn't until after the wedding that he realized that his new wife seemed different somehow. For the first thing she did when he took her to his house was jump into a corner and stand on her head.
Big honorable pardon, but why is a former sweetie, present wife, a stand on head?
And she answered,
"Why not?"
Unable to think of a good reason, he let it go. It was some time later that the young man, while returning from the marketplace with his purse jingling with coins, met a robber. Oh, he knew it was a robber because the rogue wore a mask and very clearly said, "Stick 'em up!" Fearing for his life, the lad streaked for home with the robber in hot pursuit. Dashing into the house, he quickly told his wife,
Dishonorable bad guy after me. Oh, please, do not tell him. Frightened husband is hiding with money in cookie jar.
Go away, please. I cannot tell you that frightened husband is hiding with money in cookie jar.
Oh!
A short time later, the robber and the money were gone. His wife was again standing on her head in the corner, but he didn't bother to ask her why. Instead, he said,
It's very cold. I wish to warm myself. Please, cookie wife, start a fire.
She did. It was in the bedroom, and the house was burned to the ground. This was more than the boy could stand.
Ooh, if I live to be 22, never again will I get a sweetie out of a lychee nut.
It was then that his wife did the strangest thing of all. She began to bake fortune cookies over a small open fire. What was so strange about it was that when he broke them open, there were real fortunes inside.
Oh, diamonds, rubies, gold, 1928 nickels, Wilkie buttons, I'm rich!
Yes, he was rich. And the more fortune cookies his wife baked, the richer he became. Of course, his wife still stood on her head from time to time, but the boy loved her, and he called her his bargain, because she was 50% off. And they lived happily ever after.